Hi, my name is Logan. I am playing the royal human fighter, Nero Daifair. Nero is the firstborn to hers truly, Empress Azelia, and his radiance, Emperor Caligula. Nero was destined to receive the powers granted to his kin from the god of knowledge, Agma, but his fathers deemed him unworthy of the full power after an incident took place when Nero was 9. I walked beyond the city walls like I do whenever I have free time from the press or training. It was a way that I could get into touch with my inner self. A way I could fully feel who I was without having to fake my way around. The warm sun kissed my skin as my shoes mushed into the ground below. I have taken this trail a few times as it is one of my favorites due to the proximity of the river. My father told me about a great battle that was fought in this very spot between a few great warriors a century ago. The rapids flowed greatly as I further approached, the inner peace filling my soul with each breath I took. I closed my eyes, only for a moment, but it was at that moment when it happened. I was struck in the back of my head and screamed in pain as I whipped around and opened my eyes. All I saw was a flash of red. I darted my body to the left to avoid the next hit. I glanced at my attacker and noted it was a kobold. It had been a while since I last saw a kobold. It was 3 years ago at the city fair, but this attacker was not one that I recognized. This one was stocky with a cocky grin on its face as it stopped to talk to me.
The Emperor's son, eh? I fancied me worth quite the ransom.
He snickered before running at me again, pulling a dagger from his side. Being the next of kin, I was not to travel alone, but sometimes being alone is all a person needs. Though in this case, all I needed was a weapon. I looked to the ground around me to try and find anything to help fend him off, and noticed a sharp-looking rock. I quickly picked it up and flung it at the kobold mere moments before he was to reach me. The rock hit square in his forehead, and he fell to the floor, expressionless. His dagger clanged to the floor next to him. Quick to think about my next move, I scrambled to grab it and held it to the kobold's neck. Without a thought, I started sawing at his throat. It felt as if a different entity had consumed me. All the pain and fear I had endured in this peaceful place, I was now letting out in this unfortunate soul. I heard footsteps approaching and started sawing faster. It gave way. Rich, scarlet blood poured out of his every orifice and stained my royal clothes. The footsteps stopped, and multiple gasps erupted from behind me. I got off of my knees and slowly turned around with the dagger in one hand and his dismembered head in the other. To my horror, I saw my father and 4 of our most trusted guards. I will never forget the looks on their faces. Mouths wide open, eyes filled with fear. I locked eyes with him and said,
Hello, Father. I think it is time we go home.
His father was distraught with concern, yet also impressed, and decided Nero's destiny should be that of the Holy Shield, a group of battle-hardened mercenaries who swore an oath to Agma to protect the Emperor and his kin. Nero's training was unclear at first, but once his brother Gaius was born, Nero never left his side. He trained in the field for 10 years under the watchful eye of General Syandera and the Githzeri mage Kismos, until he took an oath of alliance and became a full-fledged member of the Holy Shield. He and Gaius were sent on many diplomatic missions together. Missions to the neighboring Xanathar's coast, Hunchi, and other smaller free cities located around the Empire to do business or scout out future military operations. One smaller mission, a few months ago, brought them to seek out a trader who was known to frequent the Laughable Tankard, a local bar in the poorer district of Telflam. At the bar, Nero met his distinct-looking Shadakar friend, who he knew as Macy. There she was, the Shadakai. Something about her was calling to me, but I have yet to figure out what. Her gray skin stood out against the dimly lit tavern as she made her way to my table. You again, she said with a smile, planting herself down right next to me. I have been counting down the days since I sent that message. I hoped it would be you who came to my aid. Where is the little one? Leave him at home for this bout? Good to see you too, Macy. His radiance has directed me to keep Gaius at home so he can overcome his slight illness. He didn't want to wear him down anymore, I replied, taking a sip of my whiskey. So I have been debriefed on this mission, but I want to hear it from you. What are we up to? A spy of sorts. From that musty town down south, Zaposlavia. It seems as if they still aren't keen on that brittle truce we have upheld.
Sierra intercepted a letter instructing him to further his influence in your court. From the nature of it, it appears they want to bring your father down.
That's what I thought. Does this spy have a name I may recognize?
He goes by the name Flavonus, but our sister temple in Zaposlavia tells us his real name is Yaroslav Ilin, champion of King Mikhail.
What is it with Zaposlavian champions trying to destroy our glorious city? No matter, let's go. I finished my drink and headed out the door. We knew from our intel that he was currently in town, conducting business in the inner city at a shop he was employed at that specialized in selling food and camping gear. The city was busy and bustling as people went from shop to shop in search of what they needed to get by. This town has come a long way since the Ashtabak. The place had been rebuilt under Agma's careful hand. As we passed the city guards, they stood with the salute of allegiance. The store was quite busy. The shelves were lined with goods and products shipped from around the Empire and around Fways.
There,
Macy whispered as she pointed in the direction of her human.
that is our target.
She moved to engage before I stopped her. She looked puzzled. We can't fight in here, Macy. His radiance was clear that this needs to be done without commotion. We should wait until his shift is done and catch him by surprise before he enters his home.
Ah, and that is the Nero I've heard stories of.
Macy and I made our way up and down the aisles as we talked small talk with the various shoppers and other employees. We purchased a few items, then walked out of the shop and waited on a nearby bench for our target to depart. After what felt like an eternity, he finally emerged out of the store. He looked defeated and exhausted. He began his trek home. We followed slowly behind, staying out of the way of his gaze as he looked around. At his place, he fumbled with his keys for a moment before unlocking his door. Macy was the first to act, forcing him into his house with her hands over top of his mouth. I swiftly followed, closing the door behind me.
Yaroslav, eh?
Macy exclaimed. Fear filled Yaroslav's eyes, but as he looked to me, that fear turned into anger. We know what you've been trying to do, what you are meaning to set up. You Zaposlavians know nothing of letting us dwell in peace.
Peace?
He screamed through Macy's hand.
You Imperials know nothing of peace! You are scum!
Without warning, he pulled Macy's hand off of his mouth before biting down on his molars. His body started to shake as his mouth began to foam. His eyes rolled into the back of his head and his body went limp.
What did he do?
Macy cried out. This damn spy had a pill of purple worm poison, ready to activate. He's of no use to us now. Come, let's scour the rest of his place. His home was barren and boring, with only a bed, closet, chest, and a desk to work on. There was nothing noteworthy to be found anywhere. That was until we got to the desk. Lying open on the desk with a pen and quill was a letter addressed to King Mikhail. The words written made my skin crawl. Your Majesty, preparations for the heir are near complete. We tried figuring out what that meant, but to no avail. Gaius' coronation day is coming up, and I'm worried for his safety. Nero's main allegiance is to his emperor, his brother, and his empire. He will do whatever it takes to keep everyone safe. Whatever it takes. And since Agma has refused to grant him powers, Nero hopes that one day he will be able to seek out alternative methods